There's a kind of pain that leaves no visible marks. It's silent, subtle, and spreads slowly from the inside out until you can't even remember who you were before it arrived. That's how it was for me. For years, I believed I was the problematic one in the relationship. I thought I had a bad memory, that I was dramatic, always exaggerating. Until one day, after a conversation with my husband, I found myself asking, did I really say that? Am I losing my mind? And at that moment, staring into the mirror and not recognizing my own expression, I understood. This wasn't normal. I wasn't going crazy. I was being manipulated. This is one of the most common signs of gaslighting, a cruel technique used by narcissistic people to make you doubt your own reality. And it's exactly what I lived through for a long time. Without me realizing it, my husband was using this manipulation almost daily. Small denials. Phrases like, I never said that, or you're making that up, until I started doubting my own memories. If you've ever experienced something similar, if you've walked away from a conversation questioning whether things actually happened the way you remember, then this video is for you, because you're not alone, and you're not crazy. When I met my husband, it felt like the universe had gifted me someone perfect. He was attentive, said exactly what I wanted to hear, seemed to understand my emotions before I even expressed them. Everything about him radiated confidence and affection. At first, he would say things like, "You're the most sensitive and intelligent person I've ever met. I've never felt this way about anyone else. You make me feel whole." It felt too good to be true, and maybe that's why I didn't question it. After all, who doubts a love that seems to arrive just at the right time? In the beginning, everything felt light. He'd surprise me with messages in the middle of the day, remembered small details from our conversations the week before, made me feel special. I'd never met anyone so invested in me, but slowly, some things began to bother me. In conversations, he would correct my words as if I had said something different. "I didn't say that," he'd reply confidently, even when I was certain I hadn't misheard. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe I really was mixing things up, but the incidents kept repeating. Once we had agreed to go out for dinner. I got ready and showed up on time, but he said, "I thought we agreed to meet 20 minutes from now." I was confused. I checked our messages, but there was no record. He insisted so much that I ended up believing I might have forgotten the change. These situations started happening more often, and every time I tried to remind him of something, he denied it so firmly that I began to doubt my own memory. That's when the control quietly began, so subtly that I didn't even realize it. For a long time, I thought I was the one going crazy. Today, I know that what I was experiencing had a name: gaslighting, and it was only the beginning. Gaslighting isn't just someone forgetting what they said or disagreeing with you. It's a form of psychological manipulation, where the other person makes you doubt your own perception, memory, or judgment. It's when you clearly remember something that was said or agreed upon, but the other person denies it so convincingly that you start questioning whether it really happened that way. The term comes from a 1940s movie called Gaslight, in which a husband tries to convince his wife she's going insane by dimming the lights and then denying they were ever bright. And that's exactly what happens in this kind of abuse. He dims your reality and makes you believe in his version instead. In my case, it was constant. I remembered a conversation, mentioned something he had promised, and he'd coldly reply, "You made that up." If I pushed back, he'd shift his tone. "You're becoming paranoid. Why are you always blaming me? Are you sure? Could you be mixing it up with someone else?" Over time, I started doubting myself. I needed to reread messages, write down simple things just to have proof I wasn't imagining everything. It was as if I were losing my ability to remember reality. But the truth is, I wasn't going crazy. I was being manipulated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. This type of abuse is so effective because it attacks one of the deepest pillars of our existence: trust in ourselves. When someone makes you doubt your own mind, they gain total control over you. And that's exactly what happened to me. Not by accident, by strategy. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't come from yelling. It comes from whispers. It doesn't leave bruises on your body, but slowly takes over your mind. And that's how my husband built his quiet control over me, with calm words, looks that froze my confidence, and denials so firm they made me question my own memory. One of the first times this happened clearly is etched in my mind as if it were yesterday. We had agreed to travel the following weekend. He sent me a message confirming the flight time. I replied saying I'd book the hotel when I got home. That night, when I mentioned booking the hotel, he looked surprised and said, "But we didn't even agree to travel yet. You must have confused it with something else." I froze. I had his message confirming the flight. I showed it to him. And still, he replied, "I only confirmed the flight. I never said anything about a hotel. You're making that up." He spoke with such conviction that for a moment, I actually doubted myself. Did I really misunderstand? Was I going crazy? This pattern repeated itself constantly. When I remembered something he had promised, like helping me with a project or attending an important event, he would simply deny it. "I never said that. You always twist things." If I pushed back, came the sarcasm. "I think you need to relax. You're becoming paranoid." The worst part was that he did it all calmly. No yelling, no physical violence. It almost felt like he was protecting me from myself. "You're tired. You've been so sensitive lately. Maybe you should talk to someone." He never called me crazy outright, but he made me feel like I was losing control. And every time I walked back home after one of those conversations, I felt emotionally lighter, but spiritually heavier. Another tactic he used was changing the story hours or days later. For example, I'd mentioned something we had agreed on weeks before, and he'd reply, "That's not exactly how it happened. I remember it clearly. You just misunderstood." And because he spoke with so much confidence, I found myself digging through my own memories for proof. I started rereading old messages, writing down important conversations, even recording dates and promises in a notebook. It wasn't paranoia, it was necessity. I needed something tangible to prove I wasn't imagining everything. But even with proof, he wouldn't back down. His response was always the same. "You're stuck in the past. Why don't you just live in the present?" It was as if he was trying to erase my reality and replace it with his. And for a long time, it worked. Today I know that what I experienced wasn't love. It was control. It was manipulation. It was gaslighting. Every phrase, every look, every shift in his version of events had one goal: to make me doubt myself. While I was busy trying to figure out where I was going wrong, he stayed steady, shaping my perception of reality. This wasn't a relationship. It was psychological abuse, and this is what I lived through for years. No loud screams, but deep wounds. No visible marks, but scars I'll carry forever. At first, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. Then, I believed it was exhaustion. Later, I thought it was my weakness. But over time, it became impossible to deny. I was changing. My self-confidence disappeared slowly, like water slipping through my fingers. I no longer trusted my own memories. I began hesitating before speaking, afraid he'd correct me again. I avoided certain topics out of fear of being accused of inventing or exaggerating. It was like walking through a house of mirrors. Nothing felt real, and I never knew which version of the truth was actually true. Anxiety became part of my daily life. I'd wake up with a tight chest, anticipating a conversation, a disagreement, another attempt by him to rewrite reality. I lived tense, always paying attention to words, tones of voice, facial expressions. If he said something colder than usual, I analyzed it for hours. If he took too long to reply to a message, I wondered if I had done something wrong. It was like living in constant alert, never knowing when the next blow would come. Over time, I began to isolate myself. I lost touch with friends, because he made subtle comments about the people I cared about. He said some were negative or didn't have good intentions, until I started doubting my own relationships. I even started avoiding family gatherings because he always found a reason to complain afterward. "You talked too much. You came off as weak. You need to learn how to position yourself better." And each criticism came disguised as advice, as if he truly wanted to help me improve. But I wasn't improving. I was disappearing. I started to feel angry with myself. Angry for not understanding why I doubted myself so much, why I needed to write everything down, why I felt so insecure. I'd catch myself going through old messages, searching for proof that I wasn't crazy. And even with the evidence, there was always that lingering doubt. Was I misinterpreting everything? It was during one of those moments that I realized how much this was consuming me. One night, after an argument I didn't even fully understand how it had started, I lay staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. I thought about how I used to be before, lighter, more confident, more present. And in the darkness, I understood. I wasn't just sad. I was sick. Not physically, psychologically. This wasn't just jealousy or difficulty dealing with conflict. This was abuse. And I needed to get out before I completely lost who I was. There's a moment when pain becomes so constant that you start hearing it, not as a scream, but as a quiet, persistent voice in the back of your mind. It doesn't shout. It calls. Something is wrong. That's exactly what happened to me. That night, after yet another conversation where he denied something I was absolutely sure had happened. I felt exhausted, not physically, but mentally drained. Like every word had been pulled from me with tweezers. I wasn't tired because we fought. I was tired of doubting myself. The next day, I went looking for answers. I started researching abusive relationships and psychological manipulation. I read books, articles, personal stories, and that's when I came across the term pathological narcissism. Everything suddenly made sense. All the pieces began to fit together. The constant changes in his version of events, the firm denials even in the face of clear evidence, the way he spoke with absolute certainty. None of this was just jealousy or poor communication. It was strategy. It was control. It was gaslighting. The feeling was strange. At the same time that I felt relieved for finally understanding what was happening, I also felt betrayed by my own judgment. For years, I believed I was in a healthy relationship, that we were building something together. But now I saw the truth clearly. I had been manipulated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't love, it was abuse. I started seeking professional help. I went to therapy and told her everything, every doubt, every episode, every time I had to go back through messages just to confirm I wasn't imagining things. She looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not crazy. You're experiencing a type of violence that many people don't even know exists." It was the first time I heard that, and for the first time, I felt heard, validated, protected. From that moment on, everything changed. I no longer needed to convince anyone of what I felt. I no longer needed to question my own memory. I already knew the truth, and truth has power, not only to hurt, but to set you free. Leaving that reality wasn't a quick decision. It was a painful process filled with doubts, fears, and questions that seemed endless. How could I have missed all this before? How did I lose myself so deeply? What if I was exaggerating? But with therapy support, I began to rebuild something I thought I had lost forever: trust in myself. It wasn't easy. There were days I woke up feeling like I was still trapped in that web of lies and manipulation. But slowly, I reclaimed my voice, my mind, my identity. I began to understand that there was no shame in what I had gone through. Quite the opposite. There's strength in admitting you were deceived, and even more strength in deciding to change. Cutting ties was one of the hardest steps, but also one of the most necessary. At first, I felt a sense of loss, not for him, but for the false sense of security he represented. Even knowing it was a toxic relationship, part of me still longed for that connection, as if my brain insisted on returning to what it already knew, even though it was dangerous. Over time, that longing turned into clarity. I began to see my past choices with new eyes, and for the first time, I could look at myself without judgment. I could hold myself. I could forgive myself. Today, I know healing isn't linear. I have good days and harder days. But now, when old insecurities surface, I recognize them. They aren't mine. They are scars from the past, and I have the power to stop them from defining who I am today. Recovery doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering with strength, and that's exactly what I'm doing, one day at a time. If you're watching this video now, maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe you just walked away from a conversation, wondering if you really said what you remember. Or maybe, deep down, you already know in your heart that you're in an abusive relationship, but you haven't found the strength to take that first step out yet. I know how hard it is. I know what it's like to wake up afraid of saying the wrong thing, to doubt your own memory, to feel like you don't even recognize who you used to be before he or she came into your life. But I also know that healing is possible, not overnight, not without pain, but possible. You deserve a love that strengthens you, that listens to you, that respects you, that never makes you question your own mind. And if this video touched you in any way, please leave a comment below. Share your experience, your doubts, your strength. You are not alone. If you can, save this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. Together, let's build a safe space for everyone who wants to understand, heal, and move forward, because you are worthy of real love, and you deserve to live a life where your reality is never questioned.